All right, everybody, welcome back. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing another Louis L'Amour novel, North to the Rails. This is book 5 in Louis L'Amour's Chantry series. For a little bit of background on this series, Louis L'Amour wrote the Sackett series first. It's about 17 books long. You can see it right here behind me. Starts out in Old England, and it traces the history of a family from Old England as they immigrate to America, get involved in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, then they move out west. Most of the first 3 or 4 books take place, in England, the Civil War time, Revolutionary War time. Most of the books take place in the Old West. Louis L'Amour loved that so much that he wanted to do another family saga similar, starring the Chantrys. And he would interweave a lot of the Chantry stories into the Sackett stories, and some of the Sackett characters would make it into these books. However, Louis L'Amour only got 5 books into the Chantry series before he passed away, so we only got 5 rather than like the 20 Sackett books. And I've been reading them and reviewing them one at a time. I started with Fair Blows the Wind. That's the first book. We're talking about the 1500s and pirates. You can see my review on the channel. Then we did book 2, the Ferguson Rifle. No, that's not it. The Ferguson Rifle, which was a good book. Takes place right after the Revolutionary War. Then we did Over on the Dry Side, which is one of my very most favorite Louis L'Amour books of all time, set in southern Utah. And then Borden Chantry, book number 4 in the Chantry series. This is Louis L'Amour's attempt at a Western / serial killer murder mystery novel, and it's really good. And now we are reading the 5th one and the final in the Chantry series before he passed away. Didn't get to finish the saga, but this one is called North to the Rails, and it's cool. It's cool as all the other Louis L'Amour books. This thing starts out, well, let's review the cover. We always talk about the cover. Almost forgot about that. This is another great Western painting by Gordon Crabb, one of the main Louis L'Amour illustrators. Gordon Crabb's done a lot of the illustrations for Louis L'Amour covers. Your typical cowboy scene. These guys are out riding their horses, on the range. And that's kind of what this book is about. Starts out in Las Vegas. There's a gunfight. There's a saloon in Las Vegas. A gunfight breaks out. Things happen, People forget, despite all the modern glitz and glamour of Las Vegas, place used to be an Old West town. I mean, it's still just an Old West town, So it was settled by the Mormons back in the 1800s, and it remained an Old West, just saloon town for a long time, just out there in the middle of the desert, just before any of the casinos. And so we get this book starts out with our main character, Tom Chantry. Remember, it's the Chantry saga, so each book is about a different one of the Chantry descendants, just like the Sackett novels were about the Sackett descendants. So this one is about Tom Chantry. Let me read the back of it, and we'll discuss what goes on in the book as I read the back of it, because it's got a good description here. Tom Chantry vowed he would live his life without ever carrying a gun. Well, he realizes that's a bad idea once he hits the saloons in Vegas and gunfights are breaking out left and right. But when he drives a herd of cattle north of Dodge, he discovers that life is treacherous for an unarmed man, especially for one who's been branded a coward. One of the things that I liked about this book is it's a lot about cattle drives and a lot about the Native Americans, and he gets kind of like, if you've seen the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, The Revenant, where he gets attacked by bears and has to crawl through the wilderness injured. There's kind of a similarity to this book where Tom Chantry, he gets severely injured and he's left out in the wilderness alone, and he has to really sort of, with bad injuries, sort of in hunger and starvation, fight his way through the wilderness to reach, civilization again. So I like that Louis L'Amour, sometimes these Louis L'Amour novels get very vast and epic, and other times, like with this one, it really does focus down into just the bitter struggles of one character. And this does that for a brief period of time in the book. I love it. I love it. So anyway, on the cattle drive, Chantry encounters some of the land's most dangerous characters, from the notorious gunman French Williams and the murderous Talrim brothers to a threatening tribe of Kiowa and an enigmatic femme fatale. There's always a love interest. It's all right, though. It's all right. As the cattle drive twists Chantry's past and present together into a tangle of guilt, redemption, and buried family history, the line between friends and enemies grows faint, and Chantry must sort out what people he can trust and what ones mean him more harm. Okay, so that's kind of what happens. It's the story of just Tom Chantry. He's kind of a lone character. He's kind of like, he doesn't want to be a gunman, but he has to be one. He kind of gets on this cattle drive, much like Lonesome Dove, and there's a lot of things that are adventures and stuff that go along on this. One of the adventures of which is he's kind of gets abandoned and injured, and he's gunshot, and this, that, and the other. This is a good, solid Louis L'Amour Western. I really quite enjoyed it. Book number 5. Sad to leave the Chantry saga. We will be, before it was finished even. I mean, he had a lot of plans for this. And he had a lot of plans to integrate a lot of these Sackett characters into some of these books. And he did sort of that with a few of these books, but he was really going to get into it later. But he never got the chance. So we will be reviewing all these Sackett books eventually on the channel. Hell, I've got 100 Louis L'Amour books here. I think I've reviewed about maybe 30 of them so far, but we're going to get to all of them. So don't you worry, folks. I give this a good 8 out of 10. I quite enjoyed it. All these Louis L'Amour books, you can sit down, and they're only about 200 pages each. You can read them about in a couple hours. Easy reading, very adventurous, very well written. Love them all.